Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ground Level's Wednesday Wisdom. We're really excited today to be joined by Richard Bradbury. I'm going to let Richard introduce himself in a moment. And we're thinking about climate change, and we want to talk about some practical things that churches and us as individuals can do to do our bit within the climate change stuff that's going on in the world at the moment. And we also want to talk a little bit about the why. Why should churches and us as individuals be kind of actively doing things in this area? So, Richard, could you just kind of introduce yourself and explain who you are and what your role is?
Sure. I'm Richard Bradbury. I lead the church, Beverley Community Church, um, and I'm also represent ground level in all things to do with churches together in England. But my interest in the whole environmental stuff goes back probably to the 70s when there was the whole thing about CFCs destroying the ozone layer, and I've been active and aware of things since then. For a lot of the 2000s, my wife and I ran a shop that was focused on recycled goods, fair trade products, and so on. So it's something that's very much in our heart, but it flows out of our faith as well. It's not just something that we've added on, it's something that's at the core of what we believe we're called to.
That's great. Well, at our Leaders National Forum the other week, Richard, you were able to share with us a kind of lecture on the why for why churches should be active within the climate change subject. I wondered if you could just kind of summarize that for us in a few minutes, just kind of remind us of the importance of this area and why we as Christians and we as church leaders should be kind of actively working in this subject.
Yeah, sure. I believe it goes to the core of what we're actually called to. It's part of our mandate. It's the stewardship mandate that was first given to the first men and women in the garden. They were called to look after the earth and to care for it. And that was the task that was given, and particularly in the garden where they were placed. And part of the restoring and redeeming work of Christ is to bring all things back as they were originally intended to be. And I believe the church has to be an active agent in bringing things back so that the whole of creation reflects the glory of God. And that task, of course, will not be completed until Christ returns. But nevertheless, we as the church need to be part of that restoring work. We can't just continue on in the way that the world has gone in terms of exploiting the world's resources without any care for the fact that we have a creator who made the earth, made the creation in order to display his glory. We can't carry on just being those who help to destroy it. And I believe our voice is the most important voice in this area. We've left it to others to express this whole opinion. We've left it to Greenpeace. We've left it to the Quakers. And we as evangelicals have been silent on it because we've been concerned with saving people for heaven. But actually, when we see the big picture of the fact that Jesus is coming back to rescue this earth and to restore creation, as it says in Romans chapter 8, that we then have to see that part of our mandate is to be active and speaking out on this issue and helping to bring about by our individual lives and as churches that restoring work within the environment in which we find ourselves.
That's brilliant. And you reflected yourself there, Richard, that this is something that not many churches have kind of thought about, or it's not really been a topic that churches have approached necessarily in kind of recent days. So I wonder if, first of all, you could just kind of help us to understand what the best way to start talking about this in our churches is, and to start talking about it as church leaders is as well.
Well, one way that's been suggested, and a lot of churches are doing it, and my own church did it a few weeks ago, was having a climate change day where we actually spend our time talking about our responsibility and also working practically through what people can actually do about it. That's one opening gambit that we could all take. Another one is to think about the resources that are available from, say, Aroca, who have this whole project of helping churches become eco churches and thinking through all of the aspects of their building, if they've got a building, and their lifestyle and the grounds that they have, and seeing how each of those areas can be more used more effectively. Firstly, to promote a positive view towards creation, and secondly, to actually reduce the carbon footprint and promote recycling, etc. So there's lots of resources out there from, as I say, Aroka and others, that can help churches think these things through for the way they continue to act and be within their community.
Right, and I think obviously a lot of businesses are being challenged at the moment, aren't they, to offset their carbon footprint and set a target for net zero. And wouldn't it be great if us as churches could kind of go ahead of the business industry in this and could actually really lead the way in setting a precedent of net zero and of being really kind of eco-responsible in our churches? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, and the other thing we can do is, I mean, within my town, the council has got an initiative to partner with other people who want to move this whole agenda forward. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be partnering with and be at the forefront of those kind of community-based actions that are going to help, say, our town, our village, become an eco-friendly village or place where we reside. So, you know, those are other things we can do to get actively involved in this whole agenda.
That's brilliant. Well, here at Wednesday Wisdom, we love the practical, so we love to kind of really ground it in what are the practical things that we can do, both as individuals but as churches, to support this. So I wonder, Richard, if you could just share with us just some practical insights on things that we can be doing, both as churches and individuals.
Sure, I mean, I could spend the rest of the day doing this, but I'll pick out some main things until you tell me to stop. First thing is an obvious one: use less plastic. So, for example, when lockdown happened, we went to individual communion goblets, plastic ones, but we ensured that they were biodegradable. And you could even get compostable ones, but they've got a lot of air miles associated with them, so we've not gone down that line. But nevertheless, use less plastic, use biodegradable plastic, use compostable plastic, use alternatives. Eat less meat. 15% of the bad gases come out of cattle in the world. So if we eat less meat then and less dairy, then we'll be reducing our carbon footprint with regard to that. And also look at the air miles on food. Where has it come from? Do I need to buy something that's come from the other side of the world, or can I get something that's been produced locally? That also helps reduce carbon footprint. Think about your journeys. Can you walk to that place, or is it just less convenient? Can you use your car a bit less? I'm not saying we have to go as far as all buying electric cars. I think there are other issues with regard to electric cars. For example, the metals that go into the batteries don't have a very good environmental footprint with them. But that we can do less travel, and we can use our bikes or use our feet or whatever. Use your garden, plant pollinators, save water, do composting. Perhaps if your garden's big enough, have a wild area where pollinators can be planted that can encourage butterflies and bees that all help the environment. Pick up litter. Don't leave it for wildlife that's wandering around. Don't leave it for hedgehogs to get caught up in, or birds to be poisoned by, and so on. Another area that is particularly noxious is all the soaps and the detergents that we use, many of which still have microbeads in. And microbeads are tiny elements of plastic that go down our sinks and end up in the sea and are polluting our seas. Think about the soaps that you use. So think about the detergents you use. Think about the washing powder you use. Has it got micro beads in it? Has it got harmful effects in it? Is it just going to be leaching out into the land? Think about it. There are plenty of alternative sources out there, whether online or in local stores or even in your supermarkets. In Beverley we have something called the refill shop, where you can go, for example, to get food products and take your container with you, and it saves on packaging, and you just weigh it out and then take it home. I'm sure there are those kind of places in other places as well, which can help reduce that amount of plastic and waste that we're using. How about food waste? How much do you throw away in terms of food each week or each month? Think about planning your diet and the cooking that you're going to do so that you're not wasting so much. That's an obvious thing that we can all do. Take your own cup to places. Places like Costa actually advertise a cup that can be given, which is biodegradable, that you can take back and refill every time you go for a cup of coffee if you want to. Or when you're going to a meeting, take a cup and take it home with you so you're not wasting, producing more waste. I try and do that whenever I remember. I don't always remember, I have to confess, but whenever I remember, I try and do that. Save energy, whether in your church building or at home. Think about insulating. Turn down the thermometer, the thermostat by a degree or two. There's lots of things we can do just to reduce how much energy output that we are making by using our homes and our spaces in which we live more sensibly and in a more eco-friendly way. How about clothing? There's a number of issues with clothing. Firstly, a lot of clothing has lots of air miles on it and is produced in exploitative factories in the Far East. But think about, firstly, the air miles on it. Think about using natural fabrics or recycled fabrics. So a lot of sweatshirts can be made from recycled fabrics rather than by mass-produced new nylon that's being manufactured, or can be done from cotton and things like that. So there's a couple of companies, Rapunai, who are online, and Tentree, both of whom produce natural fabric cottons. And so if you look at those, you know that you're not adding to the ecological problems in the Far East or in other places. Also, even shops like M&S have a whole range of natural fabric clothes. If you're so inclined to go and shop in M&S, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's worth having a look at those kind of things. And then just avoiding consumerism, just buying things for the sake of buying them. I mean, we're coming up to Christmas, and this is one of those times when we can all get caught up in that consumerist rat race. But I can give you some examples of what some of my own family have done in this respect. Firstly, we always look at our wrapping paper. Is it recyclable? Can it be tied up rather than using sellotape, lots of more plastic? Can the packaging be used in a different way? Can I make the presents? It's something my daughter Katie has done. She has made all the presents for everybody for the last few years, and you know, it's perfectly wonderful presents that she's giving us. But rather than adding to that consumerist mentality of having to buy everything, avoid plastic things. Buy more natural products that you can give to people. Buy them a gift of something like, for the World Wildlife Fund, which we did one year, we bought everybody a gift of natural products, or of a gift for of a tiger, paying for a tiger for a year or something like that. All of these are positive ways of using our resources in a way that's not going to damage the earth. Does that give a good summary of something?
I think that's really helpful. And I think even just thinking, I heard a quote the other day of someone saying, it's not about getting it perfect. This isn't us asking everyone to go from doing what we're doing now to doing it perfectly. It's everyone saying, these are the little steps that I can take to do my bit in this story to make this better. So I know we've tried to cut down the amount of meat that we're eating. We've tried to think about some of these things that we're doing even at home, just to do our little bit. But I think as well for churches to think, how do we clean? How do we look at what furniture we buy, and are we getting that from a sustainable source? Can we reuse something that we've already got? Do we need to buy new? And all of these kind of things within our church, where does our energy come from? Where we can be a bit more responsible and take a bit more ownership of this as well. Have you got any other kind of ideas of what churches could do, Richard?
Well, I think that's one that you've just touched on, is thinking about where our energy comes from. Because, of course, we can buy packages now from most of the suppliers, the energy suppliers, that focus on hydroelectric power or wind power and more sustainable sources, rather than just signing up to the cheapest one. And that's one of the things. A lot of this stuff is not going to be cheap. It's not going to be the cheapest solution. The clothing may not be the cheapest solution. Some of the other products for cleaning and so on may not be the cheapest solution. But in the long term, it's a better solution for the world. And so, again, thinking about our buildings, we can think about, is our lofts insulated where we're in a building, a public space that could be wasting resources? Do we really need the heating on that early in the season, or can we ask people to bring coats? We want people to be comfortable, of course, but the challenge is that we can all do something. We can take steps. We can think about what coffee we're using and where it's coming from, and is it a sustainable supply, or is it accumulating air miles? It doesn't have to be bad coffee, but it can be from a good source. All of those things can add to what we're doing. Are we using plastic throwaway cups, or are we using cups in a way that is going to add an overhead in terms of the cleaning, the dishwashing and all the rest of it? How are we using our resources from that perspective, and is it a responsible way of using the resources that we have as a church?
Yeah, that's really helpful, Richard. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for just sharing some of those practical ideas. And I hope this kind of helps to inspire churches that there is something that they can do to speak into this and to take some practical steps to work in this arena and become more eco-friendly and more responsible towards the environment. So if anyone has any questions for Richard, please do feel free to send those into the office and we'll happily pass those on. Richard, were you going to just say something then?
Yeah. I was just going to say I can give a couple of good websites that you can go to for lots more practical advice. Firstly, the RSPB website, Royal Society for Protection of Birds. In there they've got a whole section on green living, which gives so many good tips on some of these things in much more detail than I've given this morning. Also, the Wildlife Trusts org have got a section called Actions, and again it goes through lots of things that you can do, especially in your garden and places like that. Then there's people like Greenpeace, of course, and Arocha, who I talked about earlier, AROCHA.org, and all of those websites, and I'm sure there are many more, are giving lots of good hints and helps. And of course, the other side of it is speaking out. I mentioned earlier, we've got a strong voice in this area. Can we write to our MPs where we see issues in our own environment that perhaps need speaking out about? Can we challenge the local authority where they're doing things that are completely not helpful towards the environment? We have a voice. Let's use it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Richard. So good to have you with us. And thank you all for joining us for Wednesday Wisdom.